So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, we find these layers extremely important these days because the world is going through so many changes. And some of the countries, for instance, such as the Northern Kingdom or then the Soviet Union, yet they are adjusting themselves as far as the new system of China. Came out very fresh news, and the news is then Mr. Putin, or then the president of the Soviet Union, is working on his own government and making sure then he stabilizes within 2 years. So it is very important we understand this topic, because as we read what China is doing and then the timing of the holy instructions along with it, we find then China then linking up the Chinese country within 2 years, mostly the northwest area of China. So then after these couple of years, then China is going to start link up the rest of the world. So we are then living during a time, it's extremely important, making a reference as far as the digital era, the information technology, and obviously the importance of then the freighters then becoming linked with local governments. This topic truly is very big, because most of the taxes coming when the new system then is implemented, then the countries, they receive taxes by using then the existing information of the freighters. So then when we read, for instance, Gala or Revelation, you find then in many references, and then the freighters of the earth, the freighters of the earth, and then the freighters of the earth. What he is explaining then, what the Savior is giving us as far as future reference, is then the freighters, they are the very core and the center of the world's market. It's no longer what then Daniel had in the past, as far as Daniel the 2nd chapter, where the head of gold, and then the breast and arms of silver, and then the center of the bronze, or the dorsal area as then bronze, and then the legs of iron. And then we are at the base of the statue, where then China was selected as being then the iron, and also Africa, and also the Soviet Union. These are the main players of the base of the statue of Daniel. In order for us to understand a couple of situations, the first is then tabernacling on the land of Cush, northern Africa. The second is obviously trade, and this trade is then subdivided by a couple of areas. The first then is the first son of Abraham or Ibrahim. His name was Ishmael. He was a king, and this king was then the legacy of trade. So then he himself was very prominent on the land when the brothers of Joseph sold him to slavery. The sons of Ishmael, they were very prominent in the land, and they were the very ones that purchased Joseph, and then he was then sold in Egypt. So then, the first section then are the sons of Ishmael. They are going then link up with China, and China is the factory of the world, and then the Ishmaelites are then the fuel. So then the second portion of these is then China. China then produces, the Ishmaelites, they have the fuel for transport, and then the freighters become the new big players in this time of the end. As we then understand these working then we understand what's coming in the near future, because in a couple of years China then is linking up with the entire Chinese country, and then later on then it starts then the linking up of the world. In March of this year, in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in Barcelona, Spain, they're going to have a very important event over there regarding the mobile in the world, or then the mobile telephones, and then doing trade also involved with it. So then the system is changing very rapidly, and then paper money is becoming truly obsolete. There are very strong evidences if a person wants to become a person of handling paper money, they have to pay extra only to have the paper in their pockets. Because with a reliable telephone, you can do whatsoever you do with money, and much easier, because you have a record, you know how to maintain a record of what you spent. So then once you get then a telephone and a system where you can receive and you can send and you can do transactions and investments with your telephone, you then substitute for the reason of having paper money in your pocket. As we are then marching towards this objective, let's then evaluate what the Soviet Union is going through. It is understandable that the sons of Ishmael, they are lowering the price of oil, but there is a reason for it. So the nations can start purchasing and becoming productive. The more then the nations they can purchase cheap oil so they can have cheap gasoline, this truly is incentive for the people to go to work. In order for these then to take on, then must have also alternatives. And then mining is very important, infrastructure, ports, airports. So then, as we are expecting these couple of years, then we can be sure of this topic. By the end of 21/6, we have this year 1/5, next year 1/6. By the starting of 1/7, we are going to find China then leaping forward as far as having this system then set up in the rest of the world. For instance, the Pacific, such as Australia, New Zealand, also in many countries of the Pacific, they already have a very similar system as China has, and this system is very easily adapted for the Chinese system. And then from then on, then you have also the military situation, and this is what then the Soviet Union is working on. Because the objective, as we read, for instance, from Daniel the 11th chapter, you find in the northern kingdom later coming with much equipment and a great army. So we do understand that the nations, as they are working and producing, they are going to purchase arms. They are going to purchase weapons. And that's where then the riches of the Soviet Union is going to come from in the future. And then also comes the Islamic State, also establishing themselves, very important also, and their headquarters is going to be in Egypt, as per the holy instructions. When we read Daniel the 11th chapter, you find then the sons of Ishmael, then the brethren of the sons of Ishmael thronging each other until they reach Egypt, where then their mother came from. Obviously she came from Egypt. She was the first wife of Ibrahim. And there in Egypt they're going to establish then their headquarters. From then on is then the Islamic State marching south. There will be many skirmishes, but at least we understand the principles of the movements of these synchronisms, as we find then in Ezekiel the 1st chapter. The machine of Ezekiel simply gives you many round circles turning, because it explains the events. These events taking place at the same time, like the cogs or gears of a clock. So up to this point we understand. So then, as far as the Soviet Union, we can expect the next couple of years the economy of the Soviet Union becomes a whole lot more reliable as far as then understanding the importance of producing weapons. And regarding then Lithuania, their link with the European Union won't work. It won't work because the economy of the Soviet Union is becoming much more prominent as we have already the future. It states then they're going to become very wealthy having arms then sold or then weapons. And Europe is not doing very nicely because Daniel has mentioned as far as then they are going to try to come together, but they would not adhere to each other. So he's explaining a system that's failing. So then lots of situations taking place, but at least we understand what's going on in the next couple of years until the end of 21/6, and then next 5 years we understand then the military presence in the world also making a big change. So then please stay tuned, much more coming up.